Join Aiden and Layla in a dark, gripping tale of power, trust, and the consequences of love. When Aiden introduces Layla to a dangerous world she never expected, their bond is tested in ways that will change them forever. As Layla faces her deepest fears, Aiden's dark secrets unfold, leading them both down a path where the line between love and control is dangerously thin. Will their connection survive the darkness, or will it consume them? Part 1. The fire crackles and burns, light dancing across Aiden's skin as he presses another fold in the paper origami. He watches as Layla attempts to follow him, but her fingers are still clumsy, still fumbling where they hold the yellow paper. "Not like that," Aiden murmurs. He pulls the paper away and shows Layla again, taking her hands in his own to force the muscles to do it correctly. It forces the light to reflect off Layla's skin in a different way. Aiden says nothing, but he fixates on the shiny scar running along the back of Layla's thumb from her wrist, the only scar that held out against Rosalie's numerous lotions. Layla has claimed that the scar doesn't bother her all that much, but she always pulls her sleeve over her hand when she notices Aiden's stare. Aiden doesn't understand the embarrassment, the shame. He and Rosalie found Layla hidden behind a bookcase in the house of an amateur natural philosopher, one known for his obsession with the human body, who made the grave mistake of not repaying a loan to Silverstone Estate. It would have taken creatures of much less intelligence to not realize where the scars came from. There's only one scar now. The rest of them have long since faded back into her skin. Aiden's mother made sure of it. The nearby villages will need a few generations to regrow to their original size, but Rosalie refused to let Layla walk around covered in scars she could heal. Layla thinks that Rosalie's lotions work so well because she's particularly intelligent about which plants to pick from the garden. She thinks that pink tint to the cream is from the roses she tends to in the spring and summer. Rosalie and Aiden are happy to let her continue thinking that way. Aiden thinks Felix is a bit jealous of Rosalie's fondness for Layla, as if Rosalie didn't choose Aiden's father to be her own all that time ago. No, Rosalie loves Layla as much as she loves Aiden. Maybe more so, because she lets Rosalie fawn over her in a way that Aiden stopped appreciating decades ago. Of course, Layla is also much younger than Aiden, coming up on only her 18th year this summer. "Aiden," Layla says, gently tugging her hands out of Aiden's grip and bringing him back to the present. "I think I should go back to helping decorate for tonight." She motions to where the servants are hurrying around the foyer and dining room with boxes of decorations and dinnerware. "Servant work?" "Layla," he replied. Aiden had pulled Layla away from a box of red ribbons to work on a new piece of origami, citing that she was not a servant. He knows Felix has made it quite clear to Layla that she is to help around the estate. Aiden ignores that rule. Rosalie has adopted her as a ward, just a bit under Aiden's own station, and so that is what she is. "You are not a servant. Try to fold the ear again." Layla chews on her bottom lip for a moment. 2 years has made her comfortable enough to move around the estate on her own, but not enough to accept her new role in life. "If you help me with the ribbons, it would be done quickly, and we could go back to folding paper." Layla says, "We are already folding paper. And I am not a servant either." Aiden counters, "Please." Layla asks. Aiden sighs through his nose. "It would just be that box." Aiden. 2 years, and Layla has become comfortable enough to bother him shamelessly. Aiden pushes himself out of his chair and motions for Layla to follow, rolling his eyes at the bright smile. "This box, Layla. Only this box." Layla hurries to catch up to him, shorter legs working overtime to match his strides. She nods furiously. If Aiden didn't know better, he would think Layla looks smug to have him doing her bidding. He knows better. Layla is just excited to have Aiden spending time with her. The box of ribbons empties quickly. Layla has already devised a system on decorating for the winter solstice. She has only been with him for 2, but she learns fast. Aiden defers to her for where the ribbons should be placed. It makes Layla happy to be in charge, and Aiden doesn't care enough about the decorations to worry about how it looks at the end. "You have to look from the top of the stairs to be sure it all looks nice," Layla explains as she pulls him up the staircase. "Sometimes things look right from the ground and then look very wrong from the top floor." Mistress Rosalie taught me the first solstice when I couldn't help yet. Aiden remembers that year. The scars on Layla's hands had been too thick for her to have much movement at all. The origami Aiden has her do is just as much to make Layla happy by spending time together as it is to reteach her hands how to move. Happy with how it looks? Layla nods. Good. Aiden leads her back down the stairs, settling back in their chairs in front of the fire. Show me the fold again, he said. It's obvious in how Layla's eyes dart back to the servants that she wants to continue working, but she promised one box. Layla, he repeated. Layla nods and turns back to her paper, fingers shaking as they fold again and again. Aiden has long since stopped worrying if the tremors were based on fear. Layla hasn't been afraid of him in over a year. What else could he expect after he let Layla sleep in his room after nightmares? The first night Layla spent in the estate, just across the hall from his own room, Aiden woke to the sound of inconsolable crying. He had waited for his mother to come and take care of Layla. As her hearing was even better than his own, she must have heard her crying. But she never came, and Layla didn't stop crying. So Aiden went to Layla's room and told her to go back to sleep, that he would keep watch and make sure no one climbed through her window and took her. Their rooms are on the top floor, so no one would be climbing in through her window, but the idea of it had plagued her the first few months anyway. After a full week of being woken up to Layla crying and having to get up and go to her room, Aiden told her to come to his room instead. Aiden's bed was bigger and more comfortable. His windows were heavy and hard to open. It just made sense. Aiden thinks Layla has started coming to his room at night, even without any nightmares. Her heartbeat calm and steady even before she slides under the covers. Aiden doesn't care. It's not his business why Layla continues to come to him, so long as he doesn't have to get out of bed and go comfort her. What Aiden does care about is that both Rosalie and Felix swear they have never heard Layla cry at night. Aiden knows the limits of his own hearing and theirs. They should have heard Layla crying from across the house, as if she were sitting on their floor, but they swear they have never heard a thing. Rosalie admits she's heard Layla shuffle down the hall to Aiden's room, but decided that Aiden must have already taken care of any issue. I think I did it right. Layla hands him the paper with a hopeful raise of eyebrows. Aiden turns the paper over in his hands before handing it back with a nod. It's not enough for Layla, he knows, but he doesn't hand out praise lightly or without being asked. If Layla wants a compliment, she can ask for one. Aiden waits a moment for Layla to ask if she did well. It's rare that she asks for the praise she craves, but Rosalie asked Aiden to give her a moment from time to time to see if she started to grow more comfortable. Layla doesn't ask this time, and so Aiden moves on to the next step. This is how you make the face. It's fairly easy, but I want you to watch closely. Layla is nearly done with the rabbit when Rosalie and Felix come down from their studies for dinner. Aiden keeps Layla in her seat with a hand on her thigh when she begins to scramble to her feet to bow. Rosalie's lips quirk up in a small smile that she makes sure Aiden sees before allowing it to spread into her usual smile for Layla. Dinner, despite the lavish decorations, is no different than any other night. Aiden watches Layla eat and agrees when asked if he likes the food. Rosalie and Felix hold conversation and cut their food up, pushing it around their plates and pretending to eat. Layla has never noticed, or never spoken up about, the fact that she is the only one actually eating. Aiden suspects it's because it could be seen as questioning Felix or Rosalie, and that is something she would never do. Aiden is careful to never spend a meal alone with Layla, lest he be forced to actually eat. Layla has no qualms about questioning Aiden. It isn't that he can't eat, but that food is tasteless. Rosalie is the same, chewing unhappily when Layla asks if she likes the rice. Why would Aiden eat if he didn't enjoy it? His father still eats from time to time, only on the rare occasion when the kitchen makes something suited to his tastes. The kitchen hadn't even been used before Layla came to live with them. It only made sense that the meals be things she enjoyed. Remember to stay in tonight, dear, Rosalie says as she excuses herself from the table. She and Felix have never stayed longer than half an hour at the table, not since Layla made it apparent that she was more than happy to spend time with Aiden. Layla nods, ever obedient. Aiden rolls his eyes. Rosalie tells Layla to stay inside, as if any of their kind would be careless enough to pick a target without making sure they're not a protected human. Layla is well known in their community, the little human pet of the Silverstone estate. She's safer than any hunter hiding behind garlic and holy water. Rosalie said even Aiden's cousins, John and Rick, look out for Layla when she goes to the city. There's no reason for her to stay in tonight other than to soothe Rosalie's nerves. But it is not Aiden's place to question his mother. Aiden watches Rosalie and Felix disappear up the stairs to their room, stating that they're turning in for the night. Layla continues eating, continues talking. She finishes but makes no move to get up, instead taking care to flatten out her napkin. It's odd. Humans have always been odd creatures to Aiden, but Layla has always been especially intriguing. It's likely because she rarely offers explanations for her behavior, a trait she learned from Aiden and his parents, undoubtedly. Aiden gives her a rare smile when she manages a simple fox out of her napkin. I've been practicing, she says. Master Rosalie and Master Felix give me their scrap paper, and I work on the animals I remember when you're in your study. Very good. It's good to practice without me. It shows determination and discipline. Aiden doesn't mind giving Layla that bit of praise without being asked. Rosalie and Felix appear in the window behind Layla, dressed to hunt. They wave at Aiden before taking off into the night. Aiden pushes down the wave of yearning to join them. Layla spent the last winter solstice alone, waiting outside Aiden's study door, because they spent every evening together, and Aiden had neglected to tell her that that night would be any different. She hadn't been entirely alone. One of the kitchen staff had attempted to keep her company for most of the night. The next morning, Layla was quiet. She didn't yell. She never yells, never gets angry. Instead, she had simply walked past Aiden without a word and disappeared into the kitchen for most of the day. Aiden doesn't remember exactly how he felt when Layla came out that evening, laughing quietly with the kitchen worker, but he does remember how angry Felix had been at having to clean up his mess a few days later. It was of little importance to Aiden. He had been too preoccupied with helping Layla look for her missing friend. As much as Aiden wants to join his parents on the hunt, it's simply better for all of them if he stays home. Layla's attention won't stray, and there won't be any messes to clean in the morning. Do you have much work to do tonight? Layla asks as she finishes her food. Aiden shakes his head and watches the private smile spread across Layla's lips. It's gratifying to see how attached Layla is. So happy to have Aiden's attention, as though they do not spend nearly every second of Aiden's free time together. Rosalie mentioned once, barely a month after her arrival at the Silverstone estate, that Layla might be lonely. Aiden had watched her wander the halls and deflate when the staff rebuked her attempts at friendly conversation with little more than a bow and an excuse of some other task to be done. Despite what Rosalie likes to tease, it had nothing to do with Aiden's sudden appearance at Layla's side. If left to her own devices, Layla would start doing servant work. Aiden took it upon himself to keep her from sinking that low. He isn't always successful, but Layla would likely be indistinguishable from the hired help if Aiden wasn't there to pull the broom or polishing rag from her hands. He is doing his part to keep the members of his family acting as is fitting of their station. Aiden leads Layla up the stairs to their wing. My room. See how far you can get through making a rabbit before I catch up. Layla nods and takes off at a run. Aiden laughs under his breath and shakes his head. He will likely never understand Layla's ability to enjoy life like this. It could be a part of being impermanent. Layla makes the best of each day because she has no way of knowing which one is her last. Aiden pushes the thought away, rebuking himself for the sudden knot of discomfort settling in his stomach. He follows Layla down the hall and pauses at his study, trying the doorknob. It's locked, as always, but it doesn't hurt to make sure. The servants in the hall freeze at the noise, each pretending not to strain for even the slightest glimpse of the only room in the house they aren't allowed. Wandering eyes don't belong in their sockets. Aiden says out loud, the servants scatter. It helps to ease the strange, uncomfortable tension building in his core. He is powerful. Feared. He has nothing to fear, not even death. I'm stuck on the ears, Layla explains when Aiden catches up and finds her sitting cross-legged on the bed with a rabbit barely taking form. Sorry, Aiden hums. Let me see them. Not the paper. Your hands. And don't apologize. Aiden crouches and takes Layla's hand in his own. Her fingers shake from overuse. And Aiden thinks it's less that Layla is making mistakes and more that her hands are simply exhausted. It's Aiden's fault. giving her more origami work than usual to keep her occupied until the blizzard stopped. No more origami tonight. Let your hands rest. Layla blinks, and her brow furrows in that way that tells Aiden she doesn't want to stop. If Layla protests, he'll help her finish the rabbit and then hide the rest of the paper on top of his bookshelf. But Layla doesn't protest. There's a moment when she opens her mouth, and Aiden thinks that she might, a strange ball of pride building within him. But then Layla huffs a sigh and puts the half-folded rabbit down. Good girl. Aiden isn't sure why he said it. Praise has never been quick to pass his lips, but it felt right at the moment. Layla enjoyed it, at least. That much is clear in the sudden smoothing of her brow and how she attempts to move closer. Aiden doesn't stop her. He used to when Layla was young and simply desperate for attention. Layla would cling to him, and Aiden would push her off onto Rosalie. Aiden isn't sure when if that ever stopped. He isn't sure when he stopped pushing Layla away either. But he lets Layla settle next to him. They're not close enough to touch, but they're close enough for Aiden to feel her body heat. Warm blood so close to the surface. Aiden tries not to think about it. He's been fasting in preparation for tonight, and the effects are irritating. He doesn't fear that he might hurt Layla. He'd lock himself in his study with a servant before then. It's still a touch disturbing to be so keenly aware of Layla's heartbeat, though, attention focusing on the pulsing blood vessels covering her neck. Are you going with Masters Rosalie and Felix this year? To the party? Layla's voice is an anchor, keeping him in the moment. Aiden shakes his head and moves off the bed to the armoire, putting space between them. He would never hurt Layla, his little shadow, Rosalie's precious human. I'm glad. Aiden pauses, turns to face Layla. Layla is staring back at him, utterly brazen and comfortable in Aiden's space. Aiden is oddly thankful for it. He appreciates how Layla doesn't curl in on herself like she used to, doesn't shy away from looking Aiden in the eye. You're glad? Aiden asks. Layla nods. What for? That you aren't going, Layla replies, smiling with one side of her mouth as if Aiden is silly for even asking, as if it wasn't obvious. I had hoped you would stay. And why is that? Layla's cheeks blush pink, and she looks away, gaze flitting over the books on Aiden's shelves. She has read them all already, or had Aiden read them to her if they were too old for her hands, or written in a language she didn't know. But she stares at the titles as if it's the first time she's ever seen them. I overheard Masters Rosalie and Felix discussing the party. I hadn't meant to. The door to Master Rosalie's study was open, and I was waiting to be called in, and I heard them. It sounded like a party people attend to find marriage partners. I didn't want you to go. There's something barely hidden in that statement, something fragile and hopeful, and Aiden isn't sure what he's supposed to do with it. He isn't even sure what it is, simply that it belongs to Layla, and Aiden had never realized it existed before this moment. Aiden pulls his bed clothes out of the armoire, tucking the fragile thing away to examine at a later time. Well, I am not going and will not be going for the foreseeable future. When he turns around again, Layla is staring at him once more. She's smiling openly now, pretty white teeth on display. Aiden finds himself returning it, albeit on a much smaller scale. Go, he says, dress for bed. I'll read something to you when you return. Aiden knows he should have expected it, letting Layla lie next to him as he read aloud. Layla had asked if she could just rest her head on the pillows at first, then if she could get under the duvet because she was cold. Aiden knew what was happening, but allowed it anyway. You are not as clever as you think, Aiden tells Layla's sleeping face. I was well aware of what you were doing. Layla sighs in her sleep and nuzzles her face against the pillow, blissfully unaware of the strange twinge the sight causes in Aiden's chest. Or maybe you are that clever, settling yourself in my space until I don't even think to push you away. Which is it? The answer never comes, nor does it matter. He knows Layla doesn't care much for being clever. Layla is not a malicious creature. No matter how clever she is, all she wanted in this moment was to fall asleep here in Aiden's bed. Her goals are small, and Aiden appreciates the simplicity. Aiden's kind are known for the way they work in the shadows, using every power at their disposal to reach lofty, all-consuming goals of domination and control. Layla desires comfort and companionship, warmth and praise. It's a welcome change, welcome enough that he doesn't mind indulging Layla when she wants somewhere soft to rest or another person to walk at her side. A knock comes at his door as Aiden is finishing coaxing a fire to life to keep Layla warm. It's less for Layla's comfort and more to reduce the risk that she wakes up from the cold. Aiden moves his armchair to block the firelight from hitting Layla's eyes for this reason as well. If Layla wakes, Aiden will have to leave his study and soothe her. It's just easier to keep her sleeping. Rosalie is waiting outside his door when he finishes adjusting the armchair. She greets him with a smile, eyes flitting to a point over Aiden's shoulder. Layla isn't in her room. Would you happen to know where she is? I'd hate to have a talk with her about going out when I asked her to stay in. Her voice is light and playful, teasing as she always does. Aiden finds himself tensing regardless. Layla hasn't disobeyed a single order, a single suggestion or offhand comment Aiden or his parents made without thinking. She would never. Likely, the idea of being punished for disobeying would be enough to cow her. You and I both know she hasn't left the estate. Do not joke about upsetting her. She fell asleep in my bed, and I plan on letting her stay. Unless you would prefer to wake her? Rosalie's eyes light up, and her grin grows. No, she says, let her sleep. I wouldn't want to disturb her rest. How lucky it is that she has you to look out for her, helping her stay out of trouble. Aiden rolls his eyes and steps forward, pulling the door closed behind him. The walk to his study is quick and quiet. Aiden pulls the key from around his neck, hurried heartbeats loud in his ear, even through the door. There are 6 of them, not including the slower, nearly imperceptible thudding of Felix's heart. It's less than any year since Aiden came of age and was allowed to hunt, but still enough to keep them fed for months. Aiden does truly study in his study. He studies how long he can keep a human alive to feed him. He studies which veins to slice open and which to avoid. He studies how loudly a human can scream. The study is made of cold, impassive gray stone. The floor tilts in towards the center where a hole for drainage sits, a trick Rosalie learned from another of their kind to help with the mess. The drain leads to Rosalie's garden, the patch of flowers she uses for the ointment for Layla's hands. Aiden often wonders if Layla would have let Rosalie spread the lotion over her scars if she knew where it came from. It wouldn't have stopped her. Rosalie would have held her still if she'd tried to resist because scars have always bothered her, but Aiden still wonders. Heavy metal chains hit the stone with grating metallic clanks as Felix finishes restraining the last human. Aiden's father looks up from his work with a pleased smile and checks that the cuffs around each wrist are tight enough. A few of the humans are awake. Only barely, but enough to speak, and they plead with Felix for mercy. Felix lets them for a minute. He pretends to listen and empathize. Aiden, he calls, and the humans startle at the sight of Aiden and Rosalie emerging from the shadows. Suspend them, if you don't mind. Hunger. That strange thirst that Felix says is nothing like what happens when Layla's stomach rumbles in the mornings. It forces Aiden's gums to split open as he walks over to the free ends of the chains. Fangs, long, hollow, and pointed, slide down over the puny teeth humans call fangs. It stings. It always stings, but Aiden has come to love the sting. It means food is close. Distantly, Aiden recognizes a strange sense of relief that he will be able to return to his room and not have Layla's heartbeat taking up all his focus. Attention narrowed to the blood rushing through Layla's veins, but he pushes it away. The rest of the humans wake as they're suspended by their arms, chains pulling them upright and holding them in the air. Please let us go, one pleads. We didn't do anything. We won't tell anyone. Oh, we know you haven't done anything. This isn't personal. If it was, my sweet child would have already killed you. No room for finesse in his head when he's angered. Rosalie moves around the room with such fluidity that she appears to float, examining each human in turn. Felix has already chosen his, and he waits, looking utterly bored now that the humans have turned their attempts to plead for mercy to Rosalie. Aiden smiles to himself. He has never truly bonded with his parents except in these moments, when he can watch them relax out of the facades they've forced upon themselves to appear human. Rosalie becomes graceful and fluid as her fangs drop down and the pupils of her eyes narrow and elongate into slits. Felix stands still, impassive and lying in wait for the moment he can strike. The humans have always linked their kind to bats. Aiden has always thought snakes would be a better descriptor. Layla would be so odd to watch in these moments. She is soft, gentle. She would likely keep her human unconscious until they died to save them from feeling any pain. Aiden imagines her discovering how to store blood, so they don't have to kill as often. He decides to treat his second human from this batch how he believes Layla would, just to see. But there is no goodwill within him for the man daring to meet his eyes now. Aiden hadn't planned to pick him, but he has always enjoyed the rush of power that comes with breaking humans like this man. "What?" the man says as Aiden steps forward, fangs fully extended. "Are you going to tell me not to scream? That if I'm quiet or I answer your questions, that I will live?" Aiden laughs as the world dissolves into hot reds and cold blues. Rosalie said it was a trait only those who were born into their kind had. Felix's eyes don't change as Aiden's and Rosalie's do. No more sensitive to heat than usual. Scream as loud as you want. Felix may rip your tongue out if you do, because he hates the sound, but there is nothing you can do to get through this alive now. Aiden draws his knife out from the waistband of his pants, testing the sharpness on his own palm. Does that help? I have heard that knowing the end is coming, that there is nothing you can do to stop it, makes death easier to accept. I don't care, but I wonder if it's true. Rosalie's food lets out a muffled scream as she drags the knife across its arm. There could be servants walking past the study door at this moment, blissfully unaware of the fact that their employers are bleeding their kind dry for fun on the other side of the door. Felix was smart to build the room out of stone, to hollow the door out and fill it with the cement he witnessed in Rome. Aiden slices the man's wrist open and relishes in the yell. He leans in and follows the stream of blood with his tongue, careful to keep his fangs clear of the skin. The last thing he wants is to slip and lose a food source because he had to kill him before the venom finishes its job. Rosalie laughs. "Don't play with your food, dear. You never know if Layla will wake and come looking for you." Aiden nods, puts his mouth to the wound, trickling blood, and sucks. The human screams, and it's a beautiful song. Part 2. Layla is still asleep when Aiden returns, mostly clean and sated. The fire is dead, and Layla tosses in discomfort from the cold. Moonlight casts a silver glow across the bed. Layla looks beautiful. Aiden turns away from the bed and changes into clean clothing. It wouldn't do for Layla to wake up to Aiden covered in blood. Layla is just beginning to wake when Aiden slips under the blankets beside her. "Show," Aiden whispers. It's warm enough underneath the blankets, and he pulls them up from where they'd fallen down to Layla's waist. The blood from the man still suspended in his study warms him from the inside out, and Layla drifts towards Aiden to seek the warmth out, chasing after Aiden's hand where it had brushed her cheek. He lets Layla curl in close to his chest. Layla will fall deeper into sleep if she's warm, and then Aiden won't have to spend energy soothing her. It is simply a way to give less effort. The fragile thing from before attempts to crawl out from where he had kept it locked away. Something tells him that it's important, that he should think about how Layla's breath is warm against his chest. He pushes it away. Aiden is too awake to even entertain the idea of falling asleep himself. Energy of new blood rushing through his veins. And so he spends the rest of the night watching Layla sleep instead. In one odd moment, Aiden traces the blood vessel in Layla's neck, letting his fingers rest at the pulse. He has a flash of the two nearly imperceptible scars on Felix's neck, left over spiderwebs of Rosalie's venom. His fangs slide out. Aiden blinks and pulls his hand back, staring out at the window at the moon until his fangs ascend and he feels more like himself. Aiden walks back towards the estate after his run, rolling his shoulders and allowing his joints to pop. It's rare for him to have that time to himself, when he can actually tire himself out and expend all his pent-up energy. Layla usually tags along and attempts to keep up with Aiden's already slowed pace. The weather turned cold today, though, one last bite of winter before spring, and Layla decided to stay inside. Aiden enjoys the alone time. He enjoys this run. He finds himself missing Layla, though. He misses hearing Layla ramble on about the different plants she's been learning about in her botany books. Aiden already knows whatever Layla tells him, but it's cute to hear the hint of pride when the human tells him a relatively obscure fact. Aiden has pretended to not know a few things from time to time. Aiden plans to pretend he doesn't know about the flowers she brought with her, a handful of them just beginning to bloom alongside the riverbank. He is just opening the front door to enter the estate when he hears it. Master Aiden left his study door unlocked. Aiden rolls his eyes. He never leaves his study door unlocked. He is nearly 3 centuries old, not a child. He would never forget something so critical. Aiden reaches for the key around his neck on reflex, though, and his stomach drops. He has a distinct memory of the key sitting so innocently in the lock, of Layla calling for him from down the hall, and him leaving the key. Layla had been fussing with a bookshelf, and it had nearly fallen on her. Aiden hadn't even thought about the key afterward, too concerned with Layla's safety to remember. Aiden left the key in the study door. He breaks into a run, uncaring of the servants in his path. The study door is unlocked, and both of his parents are away at that damn party. No one is there to guard the door and their secret. Aiden attempts to calm himself with the knowledge that the door is far too heavy for any single human to open on their own. But the door has a tendency to swing open just a bit when left unlocked. He doesn't know how long it's been since the servants noticed the study door was left unlocked, how long it took word to travel around the estate to those stupid enough to enter where they have been explicitly forbidden to go. For the servants' sake, he hopes no one has made the mistake of entering his study, but there's a heart-beating rabbit quick just beyond the door. Aiden feels his gums split open and his fangs drop down. The study door slams back onto the opposite wall, and the sound echoes against the stone walls. Aiden pays no attention to the humans left from the winter solstice or how they jump in terror at the sound. His only concern is the creature standing in the middle of the room, heart beating so loud Aiden can hear it rattling around inside his skull. Humans are always so curious. It always leads them to their death. He grabs the human by the throat and slams them into a stone wall, relishing the choked scream. Aiden isn't sure if he should kill them now or drag it out as a punishment for disobedience. Aiden, Layla whimpers. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Aiden snarls in her face, furious at Layla. Quiet, loyal, obedient Layla, who has never broken a single rule they've given her. She never questioned them about the study either, simply agreed and asked if there were any other rooms she wasn't allowed to enter. Aiden snarls again because nothing is right about this situation. Layla would never, but she did, and now Aiden has to be the one to make sure she faces the consequences. There are only 2 ways this can go. Layla joins their kind or dies here, and now, anything else, and Aiden risks Layla spreading their secret around, having a mob descend upon their door and disrupt their way of life. You idiot! How dare you? After all we have given you. You disobey the one rule that even I had given you? Aiden thundered. Layla shakes her head the best she can, hiccuping and attempting to speak through her tears. She pries at Aiden's hand around her throat, and then settles for holding tight and stretching her legs down far enough to rest on her toes and take the weight off her neck. Are you so incompetent, so ungrateful, that you decide to disobey at the first opportunity? And no, I didn't, she cries. Aiden laughs, dark and vicious. You didn't disobey? Then why are you here? In my study, where you aren't supposed to be. I should kill you now. I should really kill you now. I didn't mean to, Aiden. I'm so sorry. I'm really, really sorry. I shouldn't have. I won't tell anyone, I promise. Aiden knows he should kill her. Layla was a liability before, and she's that much more of a risk now. But he also knows he can't. He cannot bring himself to kill Layla. For some reason that is far beyond his grasp, he cannot kill Layla. Aiden lets go of Layla's throat and watches in resignation as she sinks to the floor, coughing and crying openly. I'm sorry, Layla whispers. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to disobey. Did anyone else enter this room with you? Layla shakes her head, hiccuping out that she was the only one as far as she knew, and she'd only been in the room for a few minutes before Aiden arrived. The humans chained to the walls attempt to scream for help through the gags, and Layla shoves her hands over her ears to block out the noise. Get out of my sight. I'll decide what to do with you later. Layla pushes herself up from the floor on shaky legs and sprints out of the room. Aiden shuts the study door and locks it before grabbing the metal bar Jade uses to test how much weight any new chains they buy can hold, and snaps it in half. Simmering fury sits high in his chest, and all he wants is to rip someone apart. Not Layla, though. Aiden's anger is centered on Layla's disobedience, and yet the urge to physically punish her has already fled. If he focuses, he can hear Layla crying in her room. Aiden doesn't understand it, hates it, but he feels an acute sense of disappointment in himself. He would understand if it was the product of his own inattention and forgetfulness regarding the study door, but it's not. Part of him wonders what Layla felt when she entered Aiden's study and saw what the Silverstone family was hiding from the world. Does she hate them? Does she think the monsters now? Aiden doesn't think she does. Layla is loyal to a fault. If Aiden called for her now and asked her to watch him tear someone apart to earn forgiveness, she would likely do it. For a moment, he considers it. All he would have to do is make Layla an accomplice, and he wouldn't have to worry about the human telling their secret. Layla would be happy to be forgiven. She would be overjoyed. And Aiden enjoys the idea of allowing Layla to see him at his most powerful. Aiden wonders what is wrong with him. His anger is still there, still clouding his mind and sending an urge to kill rushing through his veins. And yet, he still thinks about Layla, about how happy she would be if Aiden forgave her. Aiden attempts to push Layla from his mind and turns on his heel and walks towards the humans chained to the wall. He allows the simmering rage from first finding Layla in his study to seep into his body, to turn him heartless. Layla is still crying when Aiden begins breaking every bone in the woman's body. Part 3. Layla is still crying when he goes to sleep that night. She finally stops near dawn, and Aiden blinks at the cold hollow in his chest. If Aiden was keeping count, he would say that Layla cried for nearly 12 straight hours. But Aiden refuses to admit that he was keeping count, and so only cares that Layla stops sometime before dawn. It doesn't mean Aiden can fall asleep, though. Aiden goes through the estate as usual the next day, watching any and every servant for even the hint that they might have entered the study before Layla the day before. None of them show any signs. One girl watches him closely, but he attributes that to the fact that she is a servant who normally tends to Layla. Aiden catches a glimpse of Layla before dinner. He is wandering the halls, so unused to having time to himself, when he sees the girl knock on Layla's door. Aiden melts into the shadows as best he can and watches as Layla's door cracks open. "Will you be having dinner, Master Layla?" Aiden can only watch through the crack in the door as Layla shakes her head, eyes rimmed red. "You need to eat, ma'am. You refuse your morning and noon meals, too." Layla sniffles and rubs at her eyes. Her smile is hollow and broken, a shaky, fragile thing Aiden sees through in an instant. "I am just not hungry today. I'll eat tomorrow if I'm feeling better." The servant girl nods and bows. She shuffles away with a defeated air. Layla sniffles again and goes to close the door. Aiden considers calling for her. She needs to eat, and Aiden doesn't know when Layla will unless he's ordered to, but he doesn't. The door closes and the lock flips shut. Aiden stares at the door for a few moments more before continuing on his wanderings. If he stops by the kitchen and orders a plate of bread, meat, and cheese to be sent up to Layla's room with the order that she eats something, it is simply his duty as the current ruler of the estate to keep those inside it alive. The aching emptiness in his chest has nothing to do with it. Layla doesn't cry throughout the night this time. She sleeps for a while, and Aiden feels a modicum of relief. He finds sleep as well for a time, but then Layla wakes up from a nightmare and cries harder than she did that first night she arrived at the estate. Aiden startles awake at the first sob and listens as they only grow louder and harsher, more raw. Aiden waits for a knock at his door. He wonders if Layla understood that he only meant to give her space until she had calmed. He wonders when she calmed down. It's a simple answer, but one he finds just out of reach. Aiden has never felt regret before. Why would he? But he regrets hurting Layla. He regrets that Layla doesn't knock on his door and slip into his room for comfort. Aiden knows he could just as easily go to Layla and offer her forgiveness and comfort. Aiden finds himself more than willing to forgive Layla for her transgressions. Oddly enough, Aiden finds that he has already forgiven her. But Aiden is a prideful creature. He always has been and always will be. If Layla came to him, Aiden would accept her. Aiden will not go to Layla. Layla was the one who did wrong, and Aiden will not be the one to break. It is unnerving. Anger still sits underneath his skin, a vicious, bloodthirsty thing, but none of it directs itself at Layla. Instead, it rages indiscriminately at the moon for shining too brightly, at the other side of his bed for being empty. He rages at the door for not opening and bringing Layla to him. So they spend the night on opposite sides of the hallway. Aiden waits in bed for Layla to come, and Layla hides in her room because she thinks Aiden won't have her any longer. At dawn, a knock comes at Aiden's door, and he blinks awake. Aiden begins to calculate how many more hours he can spend in bed, how many hours he can allow Layla to rest at his side. Then he throws those thoughts away because he is the current ruler of the house, and if he says Layla is allowed to sleep through the day, no one will protest. He pads across the floor, taking long strides to reach the door. Aiden, she starts, relief pouring through her in waves. The servant girl is standing in front of his door instead, head bowed. Aiden's mood turns sour, and he debates slamming the door in her face. But he controls himself. Layla likely fell asleep a few hours ago, and the sound of Aiden's door thudding shut would wake her. She is his to take care of, even when she's disobedient. What do you want, girl? The servant bows deeply and keeps her eyes trained to the floor. It wasn't Master Layla's fault, she whispers. Liam saw your study door was open and told the other servants he wanted to play a joke on Master Layla. He told Master Layla that you had returned and wanted to see her in your study. When Master Layla protested that you had told her never to enter your study, Liam said that you would be very upset if she disobeyed and didn't come when you called. I tell you this to ask that you not direct your anger at Master Layla. She cares so much for you, and she isn't taking care of herself any longer, and enough. Aiden sucks in a deep breath through his nose and forces calm over his body. You're sure of this? The servant girl nods furiously, swearing that she heard Liam say it herself, but that she was too late to stop Layla from going into the study. Thank you for your information. Return to your duties and make sure that Layla eats something substantial today. If she refuses to leave her room, tell her I have ordered her to go to the kitchen and eat. Yes, Master Aiden. Aiden doesn't wait for the servant to leave on her own, stepping back into his own room and closing the door in her face. He stumbles back with a quiet yelp, eyes wide and terrified, but seconds later her footsteps hurry towards Layla's room to do as she was told. Aiden sits in the armchair in front of the hearth and tries to blink away the rage. This was insubordination to a level he cannot tolerate, but at the same time, he also cannot go out and tear the servant's skin from his bones in front of the rest of the staff. It doesn't matter how much he wants to, he can't. At least he can take refuge in the fact that Layla truly did not mean to disobey. Aiden should have known she wouldn't. Aiden sighs. He nearly killed Layla over a malicious servant. He presses his palms into his eyes and groans into the early dawn light. He was rash and impulsive, rightly so, because absolutely no human can know what they are. But he never once asked Layla why she had broken such an important rule, and that pains him. Why does it pain him? Why does the knowledge that Liam took advantage of Layla's need to obey and be good fill him with a rage so vicious it makes him almost unreasonable? Layla is Aiden's constant companion, yes. They have been together in that capacity for 2 years, yes. Layla had started finding ways to fall asleep in Aiden's bed every night since the winter solstice, claiming she had fewer nightmares with Aiden close. And Aiden never minded. Aiden didn't mind when Layla began to take up more and more of his time. When Layla becomes frustrated with her own hands and how they shake if she overuses them, Aiden doesn't even entertain the idea of not being the one she cries to. Aiden has never managed to be patient enough to teach anyone origami before Layla. Aiden has never wanted someone close like Layla, has never cared for their well-being, has never considered someone his. So why dash? Oh. Aiden whispers, oh. The estate is silent when Rosalie and Felix return. Aiden sees the surprise on their faces when they walk through the door and find only Aiden waiting to greet them. Aiden shares the surprise, but has it buried down where he can't feel it. He expected Layla to break and come to him for comfort, for forgiveness in a few days. Aiden hasn't seen Layla in nearly 2 weeks. 2 weeks of lying awake at night and hearing Layla sob into the darkness. Aiden considered shedding his pride 3 days after the servant girl came to him, and he made his decision. He prefers to think of it as a decision rather than a realization. A decision makes him feel as though he has some sort of control over the rampant emotions storming through his chest every night he wakes to Layla's tears. Aiden nearly shed his pride and went to Layla, but he didn't. He knew it would be so much sweeter if he waited. "Is Layla ill?" Rosalie asks and looks around the foyer. "I thought she'd be here with you. She always loves to greet us when we return." Aiden simply shakes his head. "Layla isn't ill." Aiden has had the servant girl deliver food and report to him if Layla's health declines. "Then where is she?" "In her room, I believe. She hasn't been leaving it as of late." Layla doesn't leave her room at all anymore. The only time Aiden hears her door creak open is when the servant girl lets herself in and out of her room. Aiden has passed on subtle messages that Layla needn't hide in her room all day. She's not a prisoner, but Layla has stayed within the 4 walls. "We have things to discuss about her." Actually, Felix and Rosalie share a look. One of those strange, indecipherable things between them that Aiden has never been able to understand. Felix leads the way to Rosalie's study, the only true study left in the house. He attempts to stop at Aiden's study, hand held out for the key, but Aiden refuses. He has a surprise waiting in his study, a surprise just for Layla. He whispers as much under his breath when Felix asks. Rosalie's eyes light up and then darken, and her face grows grim. Felix sighs and shakes his head, shrugging in response to whatever Rosalie has communicated. Aiden lets the usual irritation at being left out of the conversation slide away. It doesn't matter what they say to each other as long as Aiden gets what he wants today. He has spent the better part of the past 2 weeks planning this day, and he refuses to let his own trivial emotions put even the slightest hitch in his plans. Aiden finds himself focusing on the minute details of the walls, floors, and decor of the hallway as they walk. It's all things he learned to ignore when he was young. He tries to remember how he learned to ignore them. He tries to remember what the hardest things to cope with were when he was young and still growing accustomed to his senses. Felix would be a better teacher than Aiden, but it will be Aiden's responsibility. Layla has always been Aiden's responsibility, hasn't she? Rosalie locks the study door behind her, turning on her heel and watching Aiden with a carefully measured expression. Aiden returns it in kind. Rosalie may adore Layla, may love Aiden as her son, but the good of their kind must always come first. She will put it above all else, and Aiden has prepared for that more than anything else. He has to be prepared. He can't lose Layla. Not after the decision he came to that night. Layla entered my study 2 weeks ago. Aiden watches Rosalie's jaw go slack and can feel the tension in Felix's shoulders from across the room. I left the key in the lock by mistake, and a servant decided it would be funny to convince Layla I had asked to see her in my study. I was out at the time and returned to find her standing in the middle of the room. She swears no one else entered but her. But she saw the food we were keeping and knows what we are, at least in part. And she's still alive, I'm presuming? Rosalie rounds her desk and settles in the chair, staring at the desk surface. She looks sadder than he's ever seen her before, and he doesn't understand why. Still, Aiden tells her that Layla is indeed still alive. It only makes her frown deepen. She pulls her hair out of its bun and lets it fall around her face, running her fingers through the strands. Felix follows after her and rubs at her back. Aiden blinks in confusion. He had expected outrage, to be blamed for being so careless, to have to stop Felix from rushing out and killing Layla that instant. He hadn't prepared for this despair. He doesn't like it. It feels too much like his own despair when he listens to Layla cry at night and realizes his hands are tied by his own stubbornness. Is there something I'm not aware of? Rosalie heaves a sigh, and it sounds thick with a sadness Aiden doesn't know how to explain. Are you expecting me to kill her, or your father? Or did you want us to arrange to have her return to the trafficking ring from before? What? Aiden snaps. Rage burns hot in his veins. You would give her back to th dash. After what they did to her? Do you not care for her at all? The murder he had expected, had prepared for. If it was anyone else they were discussing, he would have killed them himself. The trafficking ring is too much. It makes Aiden's vision go white-hot with rage. He can't imagine harming Layla, much less give her back to the people who left her so injured and broken. It's in moments such as these that he forces himself to understand that falling in love with Layla was not a choice, that taking Layla's heart in return for his own wasn't a choice either. It simply happened, and Aiden realized it after the fact. It doesn't make the fact that the memory of Layla curled up close next to him on the night of the winter solstice makes the anger bleed out of him any less true. Rosalie's head snaps up, and her eyes are sharp, calculating. Aiden watches Felix smile with all his teeth. Well, Aiden, you know that there are only two outcomes to a situation like this. 3 because of Layla's history and the ring's ability to make humans disappear. Which outcome were you suggesting? Rosalie swats at Felix, but he dodges and rocks on the balls of his feet with a strange, childish glee. Layla's still alive, so either you want her dead or you want her dead. And I didn't think you would wait for our permission in either case. Aiden tenses. There are a few things he hates more than submitting to higher power. Few things that make his words stick in his throat, like confessing how deeply his love for Layla runs. But he will do both of those things. Aiden is many things, a murderer, a sadist, a cold, unfeeling monster, but he is not a coward. I know the council has been more strict regarding creating more of our kind. They nearly killed the pet Felix created a few months back. I didn't want Layla under the same threat. I know that it can take time to get that sort of permission, so I wanted to clear the matter with the both of you to make sure Layla would be safe here. Aiden lets his hands curl into fists as Rosalie laughs, loud and raucous, and so uncontrollable she has to hide it behind her hand. The council has been well aware of Layla. I asked for permission to change her less than a week after she came to the estate. They were simply waiting on you, she says. Her eyes are soft, and her smile is too. Me? Why were they waiting for me? She is your ward. Rosalie laughs again, quieter this time. Layla has always been yours. You let her sleep on you the first night we found her. Don't you remember? We were in that inn, and she wasn't used to sleeping lying down in a bed, and so you let her rest her head on your shoulder. Memories flash by him as Rosalie recounts those first few weeks with Layla. He's already seen them perhaps 1,000,000 times in the past few days as he came to terms with his own feelings, but they haven't stopped making his stomach twist so pleasantly. Aiden remembers letting Layla sleep on him, and letting the human link their arms together so Layla wouldn't get lost as they walked through the busier part of town to get to their carriage. He remembers how easy it was to allow Layla to take up all his time. I'd hoped things would end like this, you know? Rosalie stands up from her chair and crosses the room to pull Aiden into a rare hug. Aiden lets it happen. You never showed any interest in any of our kind. You never wanted to settle down. Felix speaks from where he's taken Rosalie's chair. We were worried you would become an outcast. It's not right for our kind to be alone the way you like to be. There were so many beautiful, competent, educated people for you to choose from, and yet you would have none of them. And then Layla appears, depending on you for comfort and attention and covered in scars. You attached yourself to her and never let go. Aiden doesn't know what to say. Rosalie and Felix had orchestrated this from the beginning. Aiden had been led into this. A part of him wants to rebuke them, rebuke his feelings and tell Felix to go and get rid of Layla to show the world that he cannot be controlled. Aiden silences that part of him and locks it away. It's wrong. He thinks he would love Layla regardless. Thank you. Aiden swallows his pride and takes joy in the surprise flitting across Rosalie's face. He expects some sort of teasing, but she only nods and steps away. They stand in silence for a slow heartbeat, and then Aiden dips into a bow. I am taking this conversation as permission from both you and the council to take whatever action I see fit. The sunset streams in through the gaps in the shutters, casting shadows across Felix's face. Aiden watches in near apprehension as Felix blinks thoughtfully. Rosalie has already given her blessing in the way she had kissed his cheek during their hug, but Felix has always been the least fond of Layla. If there is anyone who would object, it would be him. And then he grins, nodding. Aiden releases a breath he hadn't realized he was holding and turns to the door. Tell her to let go. Aiden turns back to see Felix watching him with a rare, almost imperceptible softness in his eyes. What? When it burns, tell her to let go. The harder she fights, the more it will burn. She has to let go. Aiden nods, not understanding entirely. He appreciates the advice, though. It is much more than he had expected from his father. I don't hate her, Aiden. I simply didn't want to invest emotions into someone who would die one day. And now, I am looking forward to discovering why you and your mother are so fond of her. Aiden turns back to the door to hide his smile. He feels strange, soft. The world seems softer too. There is nothing hanging over his head, nothing hiding deep within him and threatening to uproot his very existence. It is just the gentle march of time towards the inevitable. The study door closes behind him with a gentle click, and he stares down the hall. He stares past the stairs, his study, and his room, to the dark wooden door of Layla's room. Aiden starts his walk down the hall. He marches. Layla has always been inevitable. Aiden waits outside Layla's door. The moon is shining through the windows, casting silver light across the rugs and the paintings on the wall. Layla's door is hidden in the shadows. Aiden sits across from it, bathed in the moonlight. The clouds pass by and block the light from time to time, and he watches the way the light bends around them. He has been outside Layla's door since the servant girl wished Layla a good night. She walked away, and Aiden slipped out into the hallway and took up vigil against the wall. He had to be ready. Aiden listened to the sounds of Layla's feet shuffling across the carpet, the rustling of wardrobe doors and drawers opening and closing. It was all much slower than usual. Aiden wondered if that was in some way his fault, if Layla was slowed down by sadness, fear, or the loneliness that Aiden feels in his own chest. Life will return to the way it should be soon. Neither of them will have to be alone anymore. Aiden smiles at the thought and stretches out his legs. He tips his head back to rest against the wall and waits more patiently than he has ever waited in his life. It shouldn't be much longer. Aiden's eyes snap open at the first tearful sob. Layla sounds worse tonight than any of the nights before. Rosalie had mentioned she seemed desperate when she went to see her before bed, but not like this. It makes Aiden's chest ache. Perhaps he shouldn't have left Layla for so long. It seems to have done more harm than good, even if all he meant was to make their reunion that much sweeter. He doesn't hesitate to push himself to his feet, taking the 2 steps across the hall with anticipation, forcing a smile across his face. It has been so long. Aiden has missed Layla more than he will admit to anyone but the human herself. He is tired of the quiet, empty space beside him. He is tired of hearing Layla suffer and being unable to do anything to stop it. Part 4. Layla. Aiden murmurs as he pushes open the door, forgoing knocking. Layla has never asked him to knock before. Layla startles and begins rubbing furiously at her eyes. She curls into a ball and tugs the blankets over herself to hide. Aiden hums. Layla has no reason to ever hide. Not from him. And Aiden tugs the blankets back down, uncurling Layla's fingers from the fabric as she cries harder. A sob hitches off in his silence when Aiden cards his fingers through Layla's hair. Layla stares up at him through the tears. Aiden, he hums again and fits his hands under her arms to lift her into his lap. What? Cry if you need to. I'll be here. Something in Aiden settles back into place when Layla twists her fingers into the fabric of his sleep shirt cautiously. I'm not upset with you anymore, Aiden says. I missed you. Layla falls to pieces, crying quietly into Aiden's shirt and gripping the fabric so tightly her knuckles turn white. Aiden doesn't say a single word. That sort of comfort has never been his expertise. Instead, he rests against the headboard and lets Layla cry against him, dragging light fingers up and down her spine. It feels right to have Layla here. When the tears finally run out, Layla lies utterly exhausted against Aiden's chest. I'm sorry, she whispers. I shouldn't have gone into the SD-. Stop. Don't apologize anymore. It's already been forgiven, you're fine. Really? Aiden nods. Layla smiles and drops her head down to rest, eyes already fluttering shut. I missed you too. Aiden smiles where Layla can't see. They rest like that for a time. Aiden listens to Layla's breathing become even and her heart slow. The muscles in her body begin to relax one by one, and Aiden runs his fingertips along the curve of Layla's neck and down the slope of her shoulder. Layla shivers and giggles quietly. The sound makes Aiden want to pull her in closer, so he does. It is only the moonlight and them, quiet and peaceful in their space. Layla's room is cold, but she doesn't seem to mind, simply pulling up the blankets and pressing herself as close as Aiden will allow. Aiden will let her as close as she wants to be. Aiden waits until Layla is just tipping over the border into sleep before he cups a hand around her jaw and tips her head up. "Will you come with me for a moment?" he asks. Layla nods blearily, fighting to keep her eyes open even as she crawls off of Aiden's lap. Socked feet touch the ground, and Aiden keeps Layla steady as she sways. So tired, but so willing to do what Aiden asks and be good. Aiden slips his hand into Layla's and intertwines their fingers. It's sweet how his palm nearly engulfs her own. Layla smiles down at their hands. She is so obvious with her feelings, her heart out for everyone to see. How had Aiden not seen it before? They walk down the hall in silence. Layla's footsteps are heavy and shuffling against the rug. Aiden finds himself having to slow his own stride, so he doesn't pull Layla along. He also finds he doesn't mind. Layla is sleepy and happy. She rests against Aiden's side, and he enjoys having her so close. Layla stiffens when they stop outside the study. "Aiden, She stumbles over her words and looks up to Aiden with fear in her eyes. "I know better now. I won't go near it ever again, I promise." Aiden shushes her, releasing her hand. Layla's heart beats faster as Aiden reaches into his pocket, and it's so precious. Layla is such a precious little thing. "Do you see this door?" Layla nods solemnly, looking painfully guilty. Aiden smiles despite himself. His hand closes around the thing he's been carrying around in his pocket for the better part of the day, cold metal against his hand. He pulls his hand out and keeps the thing concealed in his fist. Layla frowns and her gaze drops to the floor. Aiden opens his fist. "Open it whenever you like." Aiden watches Layla's head snap up, watches how her mouth drops open just the slightest as she sees the key in Aiden's hand. It's identical to the one Aiden keeps around his neck. He had it made the morning after he realized that Layla was his. He has yet to find a string or cord he considers suitable for Layla to wear, but that can always come later. He's enjoying this small moment of drama. "I'm allowed to?" Layla mumbles as she stares at the key. "Are you sure?" Aiden scoffs and tries not to become irritated. Layla is still so fragile, clinging to the sleeve of Aiden's shirt so sweetly. If reassurance is what she needs, Aiden will provide it as best he can. "I'm always sure, Layla. Open the door so you know the key works." Layla stiffens, makes a minute shake of her head. Aiden repeats the order. Layla fidgets in place, but makes no move to obey. "Layla, I asked you to open the door. I'm tired. Andy, trust you. I know you wouldn't give me the wrong key. Can we go back to bed, please?" Layla's heart beats almost worryingly fast in Aiden's ears. She moves to take a step back from the door, and Aiden keeps her still with a hand on the small of her back. "Aiden, I really want to go to bed." And her voice is so small. Reassurance and comfort are not easy, but Aiden takes Layla's hand from his sleeve and squeezes it gently in his own, pressing the key into her palm. "We will go to bed after you open the door. This isn't a test, Layla. I simply want you to open the door." Aiden wonders if he should feel any sort of guilt for lying. He doesn't. Layla moves forward when Aiden pushes gently, feet stumbling over each other. Aiden only stares when Layla looks back, her face tense, a nervous line accumulating the furrow of her brow. Aiden doesn't respond. It's easier to step to the side and keep Layla from leaving instead. He said his piece. He doesn't want to say anything else. Aiden watches as she fiddles with the key, turning it over in her hands and staring down at it with helpless anxiety. Aiden doesn't worry. Layla will give in. She will obey. "We can go to bed after?" "Do you promise?" Aiden smiles. Not an answer, but Layla takes it as one. She smiles in return. It's small and nervous, but she smiles as though Aiden actually promised they'd leave after she opened the door. As if Layla will leave this room the same person she went in. Layla puts the key in the lock, and Aiden hears the tumblers turn. The lock slides open, and the weight of the door pulls it backwards on its hinges, until it looks much like what Aiden imagines the door looked like when Layla entered the study before. Layla jumps slightly at the creak of the worn hinges, and Aiden laughs inwardly. So precious. Do you want me to lock it? Layla asks. She turns to look at Aiden with hope in her eyes. Aiden lets his gaze wander over Layla's tense shoulders, up the curve of her neck. If he concentrates, he can almost see the artery pulsing under the thin skin. Aiden? Aiden steps forward, trapping Layla between his body and the door. Layla backs up a few tiny steps, desperate for space but too afraid to push Aiden away and demand it. Aiden smiles again, and his gums burn as the very tips of his fangs begin to slice through. Layla's eyes dart up to Aiden's mouth and drop back down. She pretends she hasn't seen anything, but Aiden can hear the sudden uptick in her heartbeat. Aiden takes another step forward and says, "Once you open a door, you have to go through it." Layla's face crumples, and for a few tense seconds, Aiden thinks she might cry. He raises a hand and pets through her hair, taking a sixth sense of joy from the way Layla still doesn't flinch away from his touch. He hasn't done anything to earn this sweet trust, likely doesn't deserve it. He doesn't care. "Do you think I would hurt you, Layla?" Layla shakes her head, and Aiden blinks at the soft strands of hair brushing against his palm. "Gut, I wouldn't. A lie. In a sense. Aiden wouldn't hurt her without a good reason, but Layla will learn what pain truly means soon. Felix says humans aren't meant to remember pain, though. Layla only has to live through it, not with it. I just don't want to go in. I remember what's in there." Aiden has never considered what exactly Layla might have seen in the study. The chains and the humans left from the solstice. But Aiden isn't sure if she saw the bloodstains around the drain that they hadn't bothered to clean. If she saw the healed-over puncture wounds on Felix's food. Aiden dismisses the thought. Layla will have to learn to cope with those sights on a regular basis. The newly created of Aiden's kind tend to need to feed more until their bodies have fully adjusted to the new form of sustenance. They simply can't draw as much nutrition from blood in that first year. "Nothing in that room will harm you." "I know, but the people are gone." Aiden interrupts. "They were unruly after seeing you, and I didn't have the patience to deal with them, so I disposed of them." Layla pales, and Aiden shrugs. "They were food. It was only a matter of time before they died." Aiden likens it to humans eating cows and chickens. Some humans defend it in saying it is the way of the world for the stronger to eat the weaker. Aiden agrees, and he is much, much stronger than any human. Aiden reaches over Layla's shoulder and pushes the door open even more. The study is always cold, stone walls and floor doing little to retain any heat, and the cool air seeps out into the hallway. Layla shivers, but her shoulders hunch inward before relaxing in submission, and she steps forward over the threshold. Aiden matches each minuscule step forward and crowds Layla in further. It leaves Layla unable to do anything but move forward, to do what Aiden asked and obey. The moment Aiden crosses the threshold, he pushes the door closed and locks it. The sound of the lock clicking over echoes off the walls. The study is plunged into darkness. "Aiden." Layla's voice shakes. Aiden hums non-committally and lets his eyes adjust to the dark. Layla is utterly blind. Aiden enjoys how she clings to him the moment he steps close enough for Layla to find. "I can't see. I want to leave, please." In a moment, Aiden picks up the lantern he had left earlier that evening and sets it alight. Layla squints at the sudden light and blinks at the stone walls. Aiden places the lantern back onto the floor and waits. It will only be a matter of time before she sees the gift Aiden has been keeping for her. It had taken work to silence the gift permanently, but a lying tongue is a tongue that doesn't belong in its mouth. Aiden wonders if Layla will appreciate the gift. Likely not now, but she will someday. She simply has to grow accustomed to the way things are. Layla gasps when she sees the servant chained to the wall. The man is emaciated and nearly too weak to lift his own head, but he manages it and screams with shredded vocal cords when he sees Layla. Aiden can only imagine what he must be trying to say. He was intolerably rude the first few days before Aiden quieted him. An impolite liar. A truly despicable person. Do you like your gift? Layla spins on her heel, and the confusion on her face is almost laughably obvious. I thought you would enjoy it. He was the reason you disobeyed, correct? He lied to you. Isn't that disgusting? A punishable offense. Aiden takes Layla by the shoulders and gently turns her to stare at the servant that had caused this mess in the first place. He pulls Layla close until his chest is pressed flush against Layla's back. I could have very easily killed you that day, you know? And it would have been his fault for lying to you. Why you would never hurt me, Layla whispers. You said you wouldn't. Aiden leans down and presses his face into Layla's hair. He smiles to himself and drops a hand down to Layla's waist to hold her in place. Right, Aiden? You won't. Never, Layla. Not unless absolutely necessary. Are you going to hurt him? No. Aiden watches the shadows of the lantern's flames dance against the wall. You will. His fangs drop as he leans down further and presses his lips to the side of Layla's neck. For a moment, he wonders if he should kiss her first. Layla has always been a fan of romance novels, and Rosalie mentioned that Layla would be very happy if Aiden indulged her with that sort of physical affection. Something in him tells him to wait. The idea of kissing Layla now, moments before he hurts her, seems perverse. Kissing would be cruel, would it not? Aiden understands that this entire night has been cruel, using Layla's desperate need for his attention and approval to string her along and coerce her into this position. But it was necessary. Instead, he murmurs into Layla's skin, I love you. Layla's heart skips a beat. You do? Aiden nods, and he can hear the smile in Layla's voice even as it wavers in fear. I love you too. Her heart beats wildly in exhilaration or fear. It's precious. Aiden smiles against her skin. He takes the hand not holding tight to Layla's waist and smooths it down her arm until he can intertwine their fingers together. I know you have loved me for a long time, haven't you? Layla nods. I can't be certain of how long I've loved you, but I am certain that I do. And it is why I have to do this. You know too much, Layla. You know much too much. But I can't let you go. Aiden opens his mouth and lightly presses his fangs to the artery frantically pulsing under Layla's skin. Layla begins to squirm in Aiden's grip, making little noises of fear. Aiden, don't. Please, please don't. I'm sorry. I won't tell anyone what I know. Aiden attempts to shush her and holds her tighter. Aiden, please. I'm not going to kill you. I promise you that. There's nothing to worry about. I'll be right here when you wake, and I made sure to have food ready for you to eat. I love you, Layla. Is it so wrong of me to want to keep you? He looks over Layla's shoulder and feels a tendril of thrill curl low in his belly as the servant's eyes widen, as he realizes that the death Aiden has been promising for so long is coming at the hands of an uncontrollable, hunger-driven creature. Aiden's kind are wild when they're newly turned. Aiden looks forward to seeing what Layla is like when she's not quite so bogged down with fear and the need to be good. Aiden squeezes Layla's hand in his own. I'll be right here. My father said that it will hurt less if you let go. Layla shakes helplessly in Aiden's arms, and Aiden presses a gentle kiss to her skin. I got you, Layla. It'll be over soon. Fangs pierce skin and slide deep. The release of the venom comes naturally, flowing through the hollow spaces in Aiden's teeth and burning through Layla's veins. Layla starts to scream, and Aiden thinks it's a horrible, beautiful sound.
Hello everyone. That concludes the end of this book. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, please, and thank you. And please tune in for more. If you have an uncopyrighted book you want me to post Oregon, you're an author and want your book read out loud, let me know in the comments.